Okay, so today we will talk about CountMen and CountSketches. So these are two very important streaming algorithms or data structures, and it has several applications. So I would like, especially CountSketch has a lot of applications in sampling, graph algorithms, and you name it. Okay, so today we will look at these things, but and today we will see the two basic data structures, and the next lecture we will see applications of this in different settings. Okay, so that's the plan for the day. So last time we were at this heavy hitters problem. So remember that we wanted to find, so you're given numbers x1 to, the numbers are coming, and you had this x1, x2, xn thing, and we wanted to, or think of this, or rather, okay, rather, let's say, we had these frequencies f1, f2, fn, because the numbers were coming from 1 to n, and what we wanted to know is max frequency. Okay, element with the maximum frequency, and since it has with a lot of good lower bounds, we forgot about this, and we wanted to find all items I which are very frequent. So if you give me a fixed number k, I will return to you all the numbers or all the elements whose frequency is at least m over k, right? Where m is the length of the string. Okay, and so in this setting, heavy hitters are very frequent items. And what did we saw last time is an algorithm for this, what is called Mishra-Grice deterministic algorithm, that in order k space finds the heavy hitters assuming they exist. What do I mean by this? Like, so if there are heavy hitters, right? So how many heavy hitters can there be? There can be the number of heavy hitters which there could be is like k, because number of elements whose frequency is at least m over, strictly m over k, is upper bounded by actually k minus 1. So we took some order k space and finds the heavy hitters assuming that they exist. Okay, the point is that, so what can happen that in one pass it can return you a set L such that it has a property of size, say k minus 1, such that if there exists an x here, if there exists x such that frequency of x is m over k, you are guaranteed that x belongs to your set. But it could also contain y such that frequency of y is strictly less than m over k. Okay, so what I mean to say that the set L which you will get has the property that all the heavy hitters are inside, but it can make a mistake. So you need to go through the second pass to identify which of them are really heavy hitters and which of them are not. And that is very easy, because in one pass you have got this set L of size k minus 1. So you know that if there are heavy hitters, you have identified them, say x1 to xk minus 1. And next time, whenever you see x1, you increase its frequency. Whenever you see x2, it's increased its frequency, so on and so forth. And at the end, you can get L prime subset of L who are really heavy hitters. So this was very good with Mishra-Grice. It was a deterministic algorithm, and it is able to find order k. But as you notice that last class, we were talking about AMA sampling, and we moved away from talking about numbers which are like x1, x2, like where these numbers comes from n, rather than we went through this new phase of algorithm, which was like more like, let's say, phase, so which was more like that we are given a vector x bar in Rn. So you have like x1, x2, xn, and each what you call update is like, okay, at ith coordinate go and make some changes with delta I, where delta I could be any real number. Okay, and we were interested in frequency of or the function of this x bar, computing function of x bar. Okay, computing, right? So we saw that how can we compute the length, that is basically L2 norm of this vector x. Okay, and that was nothing but AMS sampling. Okay, so suppose, forget about delta I, but suppose even if the elements are supposed to come from 1 to n, and you allow deletion. So what I mean by allow deletion is like, okay, the frequency, it will be I minus 2, but like what I mean that you are allowed to have a negation. So when I say 2 minus, it means go and look at the coordinate I and subtract 2. Okay, when these kind of things happens, this Mishra-Grice algorithm cannot handle deletions. So so this is another weak point of Mishra-Grice algorithm, that it cannot handle deletions of numbers. And so we will see today how to handle these things also. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So, okay, we'll get to these two definitions if required. So the first algorithm which we'll talk about is in strict turnstile model. What I mean by strict turnstile model is that each update is like IZ delta Z, where delta Z can be positive or negative, but at any point of time, the vector x bar has a property that if you look at any point of this in the algorithm, then this xi is greater than or equal to 0 at any point. Okay, but you could have a negation. Okay, so our first algorithm is going to work only in this setting. Actually, it also works in the turnstile model where xi's could be negative, but we will only work in strict turnstile model. And in fact, I think this is something which you should have a look, is that I think the first algorithm which you are going to explain, which is called count-min algorithm, actually it works if all you guarantee that x bar at the end is greater than 0. Okay, it doesn't care that in intermediate step whether it is negative or not. Okay, all it cares at the end of the stream, my x bar, every element is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, and we will, as we will see, we cannot have any multiplicative error, but we will only have additive error to xi. Okay. So as I explained to you, what will be the idea of our algorithm? So suppose there are k heavy hitters, B1 to Vk. So we will pick a hash function, okay, and they will be like a buckets. Okay, they will be like a buckets. So buckets will be like some Ck, where C is appropriately chosen constant. And what H does, this hash function, it spreads these heavy hitters, like it's like throwing these elements into these bins. So if you have far too many bins, chances that the small number of objects of your interest fall into the same bucket is very low. So we hope with very good probability, all these heavy hitters have gone into different bucket. Okay, and we hope that all other guys, like all other elements, look, I mean, n is much larger than k, right? So all other elements might fall into these buckets. Okay, might fall into these buckets. Okay, but we believe that in each bucket we will be able to do some sort of a median algorithm to detect these heavy hitters if there exist any. Okay, so that's the whole idea of the algorithm. The idea is, or think of this way, that now that the kind of model we are talking about, x in the real number, our problem is like we shouldn't call it frequency, we should call basically top k items. Okay, what I mean by top k items, so we are given this vector xvar, x1, x2, xn, and I want to return k elements from here, okay, k elements, okay, whose value is maximum, or whose value. So if you sort this x1 to xn, I want top k values. Okay, that is the right way of looking when xi's can be real numbers or rationals. Like if this is no more 1 to n, the frequency doesn't make much sense to talk about. So we should think of this as like a top k items, right? So like you're given a vector, n-dimensional vector, where we are making changes, and at the end I want k elements who has the highest frequency. So for example, imagine yourself that like where we are leading to. Why? So imagine that you have a vector x, okay, and you are guaranteed that at any point of time in your algorithm there are at most k non-zero, okay, k non-zero items, right? And at the end of the algorithm, what I want all the items which are non-zero, right? So these algorithms will be able, so this is what is called k-sparse recovery, in the sense that I want, so I will have a 0, 1 vector, and I'm interested in, okay, give me some k elements from this 0, 1, which will be like 1, right? So you output me k elements, okay, or k indices which are like 1, okay? And this will be very, very useful when we will be talking about graph algorithms, because these vectors will be like n choose 2-dimensional vector representing I comma j, whether a particular edge is present or not. So when you want to talk about adjacency, all we need is particular coordinate is 1 or not. Or if we're looking for some vertex which is like, which has some edges incident to it or not, then we will just look at the vector corresponding to this vertex and say, hey, is there any indices for which this is 1 or not? So like all these ideas are quite related to each other, and we will see as an applications of this next lecture. And then when we will do graph streaming, we will see applications of the set of ideas which we are going to talk about this. Okay. So, but for now, forget about all this. All we are interested in is that we have this stream of numbers coming to us. Okay. And we want k coordinates for which, if I look at the value after I sorted them, then they are of the highest order. Okay. Any question? Okay. So let's get to what is called count min sketch. Okay. So this algorithm came much after the count, not much after, a few years later after count sketch. And so let's first think of an offline view of this algorithm. Okay. So what will we have? We will have D-independent hash function h1 to hd, and each function is pairwise independent. Okay. So we'll pick these functions which are pairwise independent, and each L will be a function from 1 to n. So these are like coordinates. Okay. So you should think of these 1 to n as coordinates now. Okay. Not that these are the like coordinates, indexes, however you want to think. Okay. And it maps these indexes to some W buckets. Okay. W buckets. Okay. And this W will be a parameter which we will choose accordingly. So the basic way of, and what will we do? We'll store one number per bucket. And so I think the best way is to, let's add these, and let's see if we can do an example, not example, but let's see what is this algorithm telling us to do. Okay. So I think I added a page at the wrong place. Okay. 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 And so think of this algorithm. Okay. So this is what is happening. So this is like a 2-dimensional array. Okay. So think of 2-dimensional array. Okay. Here is like h1, h2, h3, dot, say for d equal to 4. Okay. And these are like 1, 2, 3, 4, dot, 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 and W. So think of each, this is like a two-dimensional array, right? So for example, currently we have 4 cross W, okay? And now suppose, okay, so basically we have one row for each hash function. Okay. Now, what will a particular place or location will store for us? Well, okay, what will the particular location will store for us? So let's just dwell into this. So now suppose some update came, I delta I. Okay. Now, what is this means of this? I want to make some changes to, so suppose you had this vector currently storing x1, x2, xn, which you're maintaining. So basically this tells that, well, you go to the ith coordinate and please make now xi plus delta I. Now, how will we make this change, reflect this change to whatever we are computing? So we will say, okay, fine. Ith coordinate has come, right? So what is h1 of I? H1 of I tells us the location, right? Suppose h1 of I is like 4. H1 of I is 4. It means it tells us go to this location. What is h2 of I? It could be say 1. So then it tells us that, okay, go to this location. H3 of I is say W. So maybe W is here. Okay. And say H4 of I, it's say 2. So H4 of I is 2. Right? So given index I see H1 maps this index to which bucket? Okay. H2 maps to which bucket? H3 maps to which bucket? H4 maps to which bucket? Now, in the beginning, it is all 0. Now, what will I do? Okay, so think of this is like this two-dimensional array will be represented as C, L, S. What is this L? Hash function. What is S? Like the bucket number. Okay, so now what will I do for this? So what will I do for this is that, okay, I know that first hash function is storing the index I at the 4th location. So whatever it is, so it will go C1I plus delta I. Okay, second guy is doing the same job for me, but it is at the index, first index. So what will it do? It will go, no, so it should C14 plus delta I. So basically what is happening, I look at 2, I look at H2 of I, so this gives me the bucket location. So I go to that bucket location and whatever it is storing, I add delta I to that. Okay, so this is what is happening. So in particular, if you notice, what is CLS is storing? CL of S is storing following thing. Okay, look, it's a hash function. It is, so there could be several index or several coordinates who could be mapped to the same bucket, because 1 to n is much larger than the bucket size. So what is happening? So it is basically all I such that hash function of L, okay, HL, right, of I is equal to F. It means all those indexes or the coordinates for which, right, Lth hash function maps it to the Sth bucket and Xi. This is, so it basically keeps, so think of this way. So X bar is like some x1 to xn, right? If I apply hash function 1, maybe several of them goes to same bucket. What I do then, I basically keep the sum of these guys at that location. Whichever bucket it goes, those coordinates, I go and store the sum of these guys. So this is what this algorithm is doing. So if you look at, this is what I'm writing here, okay? So CLS is the counter for bucket S for hash function HL, okay? So given X in Rn with a given vector, then CLS, where L ranges from 1 to D, our number of hash functions, and S ranging from 1 to W, the buckets, CLS stores the value of Xi, okay? Like all those coordinates, like value of the coordinates, which the Lth hash function maps it to the Sth bucket, okay? So this is one. Hence, it keeps track of sum of all coordinates that HL maps to the bucket S. So is this definition clear? Please, there's no point moving further if you did not understand this definition. So please ask me a question if you have any with respect to this hash function. Like, what is this hash function doing? Like, once you understand this offline view, I'll put it in a streaming setting. Okay. So if you have no question, then let's go forward. Okay. So count main sketch was given by Cormode and Muthukrishnan. And so what are they doing? So as I told you, we will have D pairwise independent hash functions from 1 to n to 1 to W. And while stream is not empty, what is our stream? Like, this is like, it tells me the index, and delta t is the increment value. Okay. So then what am I doing? I said, look, I'm going to increment. So the idea is very simple, is that more hash functions we will have. I will get in a minute. Okay. But so I want to increment the value of this ET, right, at every place. So I look at every L. What does HLI2 tells? Okay, which bucket the index IT is mapped to, whatever is stored, please go and add the changes, right? Add delta T. Now I'm going to do, for I equal to N, estimate Xi tilde. So now, first of all, let's observe one thing. Okay. Now fix a bucket, look at H1 and look at ith index it maps to. So suppose this maps to S. Now notice one thing, that in this guy, in this location, you are not only mapping Xi, there could be several other things which are being mapped to, right? So for X, but for Xi, what is the value? What is an upper bound? Like, what is the estimate I'm going to use? Well, whatever is stored at this bucket. Now, this is what I'm going to call it Xi tilde. So, intuitively, notice that Xi tilde is always going to be greater than Xi, because not only we are storing Xi, there is a possibility that we might be storing some other values which are mapped to that bucket. Now, how many different estimates do I have for Xi? Well, with help of my first hash functions, I have one estimate. With help of my second hash function, I have a second estimate. Now, all of them are a lower bound on my Xi. So what is my best estimate I should think of? Is minimum over L equal to 1 to D L HLI. So this is what I will set up my estimate as. Right? What is my estimate Xi tilde? Is minimum of all possible estimates I have. All possible estimates I have, and I set Xi tilde like my potential, potential estimate for the coordinate Xi to be minimum of all different estimates I have for Xi. Okay? And as I explained before, counter CLJ simply counts sum of all X such that the hash function L maps the ith index to the jth location. Okay? Yes. So is the algorithm clear? So I have given you explanation in terms of an offline view, and this is just an online view of this count min sketch. Okay. Okay. So what is intuition? So as I told you, suppose there are k heavy hitters B1 to Bk. Okay. Now you consider Bi. Has function HL sends Bi to a bucket HL Bi, right? Uh, Now CL HB counts XBI and all other items that has to the same HBI. So we always overcount. And this is where we are assuming that since we are in the strict turnstile model, right? That xi is always going to be greater or equal to 0. Otherwise, we could not have said that this is an overestimate, right? It could, like, if you would have a negative numbers also were allowed, right? Then maybe if you map several numbers, maybe, for example, suppose you had 2, -3, 5, 7, 8, 6, 5, 4, blah, blah, blah. And suppose 8 and -3 map to the same location. Then what you have stored is 5. Then this is not an overestimate for 8. And this is where we are assuming that we are working in strict turnstile model, which at this point of time, but notice to say whatever guarantees we need, I think the algorithm works even when all we are guaranteed that the at end of the extreme, each vector is what do you call the vector is each xi is greater than or equal to 0 at the end of the extreme. Okay, but we will see if we are making any mistake. Okay, so this is what is happening, and repeating with many hash functions and taking minimum is the right thing to do, because for BI the goal is to avoid other heavy hitters colliding with it. So we believe, so now notice that what are we, by keeping several copies of HI, what are we saying? Okay, possibly it cannot be that for like a heavy hitter goes to the same, like for like H1 also sends two heavy hitters to the same location, H2 also sends two heavy hitters to the same location. So if we are taking minimum, it is possible that at least with respect to one hash function, the bucket which we are talking about only contains one heavy hitter, not two heavy hitters. Okay, so this is why taking minimum is the right thing to do in this setting. So this is the intuition of this algorithm. So once you come up with this algorithm, this is something which is very natural to do. Okay, so now this is what we are going to prove. Okay, let d be log 1 over delta and w be 2 over epsilon, more than 2 over epsilon. So think, so what is this telling us is that, look, uh, here is your array, right? So number of hash functions which we will take is like d times w, and number of hash functions which will be like roughly log 1 over delta, and the number of buckets which we will take will be some other parameter of epsilon. Then we are going to say that for every fixed I between 1 to n, first of all, notice that xi is less than xi tilde, because like this is deterministically. But probability that it is larger than epsilon times one norm of x1 is less than or equal to delta. Now let's try to think why we are talking about. So for now, suppose we are in the integers 1 to n. Then what is one norm of x? And no deletion, only positive quantity coming. Then what is x1? So like your numbers are like coming is like, think of this way, like 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 3 blah blah blah. So basically now it is nothing but frequency fn. So what is then one norm of x1? If anybody? then this is nothing but, what is one norm? Okay, maybe nobody knows norm. Okay.
So it's the sum of all the
Frequencies. Yeah, so this is just the length of the stream, right? This is length of the stream. Okay. Now let's try to understand what is this tells us in terms of Mishra-Grice, right? So what has Mishra-Grice told us? Well, Mishra-Grice told us that if you are looking for all items to like m over k, then something happens. Okay. So now in this setting, probability xi tilde is greater than equal to xi plus epsilon m is less than equal to delta. If we would have been talking about normal frequencies and no negation, then this lemma tells us that probability that xi tilde is nothing but xi plus epsilon m is less than equal to delta. Now, if we want to compare this with Mishra-Grice, what should we have to set? We have to set epsilon roughly 1 over k, right? So then it says that probability that xi tilde is xi plus m over k is less than equal to delta. Okay. And but since we are talking in terms of since we are talking like we could, but since we could have like 1 1 1, then maybe 1 minus 1 minus 2 minus plus 2 2, right? Or maybe some other real quantity, right? There is no meaning of like this m by k. So the right object or the right quantity is like one norm of the vector x1 to xn, and this is why this lemma is stated in terms of one norm and not in terms of like length of the stream, the way we saw Mishra-Grice algorithm, because there everything was coming from 1 to n. Since we are allowing deletion, right, and we are allowing real numbers, okay, this does not make like no more it makes sense for us to talk about length of the stream, because length of the stream could be much larger quantity compared to the one norm of xi. So just so that we are all on the same page, LP norm is nothing but for any p greater than equal to actually 0, say at least say 1, xp norm is mod x1 to the power p dot 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 xn to the power p 1 over p. Okay, so this is what p norm means. Okay, so if p equal to 1, this is nothing but right, and this could be much smaller than length of the string. Okay, so we will be talking about everything in terms of one norm from now onwards, not in terms of the length of the stream or something. Okay, okay. So before we prove this, let's make some remarks about this lemma. Okay, first of all, remember that Mishra-Grice we have unlike Mishra-Grice we have overestimate. So in Mishra-Grice, if you remember, we had this fi tilde, which was an upper bound on frequency, right? It was never a lower bound. But here what we have, like the xi tilde is xi tilde is always lower bounded by xi. So that's one basic difference from Mishra-Grice and this algorithm. Just 1 second. My note is not going forward. Okay. And notice that in Mishra-Grice, we actually store real items. But here, we are not storing items. We are just storing the estimates of each coordinates, right? And if you really want to get heavy hitters, it requires some amount of hard work and some extra space to keep track of things in a way, and then we can recover really the heavy hitters. So that's that's a second thing we should keep in mind. And this algorithm works in strict Chern-Stein model and hence can handle deletions. But that was not true with Mr. Grice. And what will be space uses? We will see that the space uses will be like roughly like dw, so like log 1 over delta time epsilon counters, and hence each of them is storing some numbers, so it will be like log m bits, right? So the total number of space uses is like number of counter, which is like log 1 over delta into 1 over epsilon, right? This is like dw space. So d is like number of hash functions, and w is like 1 over epsilon is your word size, and for each of them we might need log n bits to store. So with all this in mind, let's try to prove this lemma for this. Okay. Any question? Okay. So now let's do analysis. Okay. So we fix L. So like we have fixed one of the hash function. And so if we fix a hash function, say HL, then, right, we have 1 F W, and HLI is the bucket HL hashes I to. So suppose I has been hashed to location S. Okay. So HL of I is S. Okay. Now, what is ZL? Let's ZL be CLS. So ZL is a random variable, right? What is a random variable? This random variable stores, like it depends on this hash function. It basically stores all those numbers, okay, which are stored, right? So this is a random variable, right? And it stores the sum of all those numbers which has been mapped to this. So if I have to talk about what is an expectation of ZL, look, I know that Xi has gone to this because HL has mapped Xi here. So this is like Xi plus what else HI has mapped to this. Let's say I prime not equal to I, okay? Probability that HL of I prime is equal to HL of I times Xi prime, right? This is what is expectation of ZL. The value it takes and the probability of this, right? So, right? So remember what was CL of S was. CL of S was summation, if you recall correctly. What did we wrote? We wrote, say, in other language, J, HL of J equal to S, Xj. This is what CLS was, right? Now this is what I'm now by definition, Xi has gone here. So Xi comes out, okay? Now, so if I apply expectation of ZL, then it is expectation of these guys. But what is an expectation of these guys is like probability that my object takes this value. So what is the probability that it will take Xi prime? It means the hash function L has mapped the index I prime to the same location, which is like, so probability that HL I prime is same as HL I. Okay, great. But what is the property of HL? It is a 2-wise hash function, right? So this probability is nothing but 1 over W. So 1 over W summation I prime not equal to I Xi prime. Great, right? But can I say this is equal to xi plus 1 over w times 1 norm of x? Well, look, I'm not using mod because recall that when I was defining this, it requires mod. But this is also where we are using the fact that we are working in strict turnstile model. So each xi is greater than or equal to 0. In fact, I mean, we prove something much better actually. This is not what we are proving, because actually what we proved is it is actually equal to xi plus 1 by w 1 norm of x1 minus 1 by w of xi. This is what we proved actually, right? This is what we actually proved, because I is not included, but we will live with this. So expectation of zi is xi plus 1 by w of 1 norm of our vector x. Any question? Okay, so so this is written, whatever I just proved is a counter value that I has 2. Okay, then expectation of z is what I just computed. Okay, now, but what did we choose w equal to? Right? What did we choose w equal to? If you recall, w was equal to 2 over epsilon. So if w is equal to 2 over epsilon, then we have shown that this is less than equal to, what did we show? We showed that this is equal to xi plus 1 norm of x over w, right? So if I replace w by 2 over epsilon, right, then I will get epsilon mod xi by 2. Okay. Now, what should I do? I should just, let's apply Markov to ZL minus xi, right? And why ZL minus xi? Because ZL minus xi, because we are in strict turnstile model, this is greater than or equal to 0. Otherwise, you cannot apply Markov. To apply Markov, it is important to have a non-negative random variable, right? So this is a non-negative random variable. I want to ask, what is the probability that ZL minus xi is epsilon times mod xi? So what is this? If you recall correctly, probability that x is greater than or equal to a is less than or equal to expectation of x divided by a, right? So now, what is an expectation of ZL minus xi? Well, expectation of ZL was this. So expectation of ZL minus xi is basically upper bounded by this quantity. So this is, we will get, this is less than or equal to epsilon times 1 norm of xi divided by 2 divided by epsilon times 1 norm of x. So now these will get cancelled and you will get half. Okay. So what we have been able to prove? We have been able to prove the following. Okay. Now, for what are we able to prove? That look, ZL minus xi, probability that ZL minus xi is greater than or equal to epsilon times mod x1 is less than or equal to half. But we do not output this. Our estimate for xi tilde, what is the estimate of xi tilde? It basically, if you recall, minimum over this quantity over L. Now, I want to say this is 1 over 2 power d. Why? Because recall that we are catching this function h1, h2, hd, right? So when the minimum will be more than this, the minimum, for minimum to be more than this, what has to happen? Z1 minus x1 should be greater than epsilon times mod x1, and this should be more than epsilon, and this. But look, the hash function which gives us is h1. So h1 should be bad for us, and h2. But all these are like independently chosen hash functions. So probability that all of them will be bad is upper bounded by 1 over 2 power d. Now, what did we choose D? If you recall correctly, we chose D equal to, what did we choose D, if I recall correctly? We chose, no, where was my lemma? Log 1 over delta, right? Omega log 1 over delta. So let's substitute log 1 over delta, right? So if we substitute D equal to log 1 over delta, then what will you get? 1 over 2 by delta is nothing but 1 over 1 by delta, which is less than equal to delta, right? So what we have been able to show that the D hash functions are independent. So probability that one particular item or one particular coordinate is too much away from its expected frequency or its expected value is upper bounded by delta. Okay. Now, so let's summarize whatever we showed is that let D be greater than or equal to log 1 over delta and W be greater than 2 over epsilon. Then for any fixed coordinate I in N, first of all, xi is less than xi tilde, and probability that xi tilde exceeds by epsilon times 1 norm is less than or equal to delta. Now, but we want to have this guarantee for all xi tilde simultaneously. So what should we do? Well, let's see what can we do. Let's choose D equal to 2 log N. Okay, so now we are choosing not one hash function, like not something log 1 over delta, but now we are choosing 2 log N hash functions. Okay, but the bucket size is still 2 over epsilon. So what is the probability that xi tilde is greater than x1 plus epsilon times mod x1? Well, it was, if you recall correctly, it was less than delta. Less than, basically, it was 1 over 2 power D. So, but now, what is our D is 2 log N. So this is less than or equal to 1 over N square. So now we have boosted this guaranteed. So this is what I meant, that the number of hash functions you choose, it boosts your guarantee of accuracy by which you're doing things. Okay. Now, by union bound, so what I mean by union bound, what is the probability that, so now let's ask ourselves, what is the probability that exists a coordinate, okay, that exceeds epsilon times mod x1? No. Okay. Is now, oh, well, there exists a coordinate. So maybe it is the first coordinate. Well, that happens with probability how much? 1 over n square. Oh, maybe it's a second coordinate. So that happens with probability 1 over n square, so on and so forth. So that is n times 1 over n square. So probability that there exists a coordinate which exceeds more than epsilon times 1 norm, okay, is bounded by 1 by n. So by union bound, with probability 1 minus 1 by n for all i1 to n, what is the bound we have? Xi is less than or equal to xi plus epsilon norm of 1 norm of x. Right? So now let's summarize whatever we said up until now. So if you are just looking for one coordinate, then we first bounded by probability delta. Then by making several copies of hash function, we were able to guarantee that each xi tilde simultaneously is upper bounded by epsilon times mod x1. So what is the total space? How many counters did we use? Well, number of counters we use is D times W, right? So number of hash functions we use is like 2 log N, and the counter we use is like 2 over epsilon, so order 1 over epsilon log N counters. And how much space for each we might be storing some numbers from 1 to log N, 1 to what is that called? We might be storing some number which is like 1 to so some log N bits. So like this is 1 by epsilon log N bits. Okay. Any question? Okay. But now let's ask ourselves a question. Why count min is a linear sketch? Do you remember the definition of linear sketch? Okay. So what I mean by linear sketch, if you recall correctly, so suppose you have sigma 1 and sigma 2, and you have applied some sigma 1, C, this is your, so is nothing but this is, okay. And one way to do this was, I told you that if you can write everything as like some m of x, right, where like some as a vector m of x, then it is very easy, because if you have some x and y, then mx plus y is nothing but mx plus my. Okay, so can we write this as some matrix form? Okay, any idea that we can write this as some sort of count min linear, as a linear sketch? Okay. Okay. So let's look at what is actually happening, and then probably we'll understand. So this is my matrix. Okay. And suppose this is my lth hash function, and this is my sth location. Okay. What is this storing? It is storing CLS is equal to summation going over I hash function of I is S xi. I want to write this as dot product of u comma x. Okay, can you tell me what u should be? You know what x is. X is your vector x1 to xn. So what u should be? Any idea? Look, I want u such that u dot product of x is this. Now, okay, so think of this way, right? This is basically summation of some xi's, right? So basically, I can think of u as 0, 1 vector. And what is the property of the 0, 1 vector? Like some place 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. What? Which place should I put 1? All those coordinates which HL maps to S, right? All those coordinates such that HL of I equal to S. So this is an n-length vector. This is an n-length vector. If you take a dot product, what are you going to get? Right? You will get precisely this term, because only at those locations you have put 1. So if you take a dot product of u dot x, you will get exactly this term. So the way we make this big matrix, it's a really big matrix. Add this. Okay. So this big matrix is a really very, very huge matrix. Okay. So this is the matrix M. So the dimension of this matrix is going to be dw times n. Okay. So now, like first d rows are stored for hash function 1. Second d rows are stored for hash function 2, so on and so forth. And last d rows for hash function d. Right? So every hash function has now, no, what did I do? Not d rows. So this is just my mistake. Sorry. Every hash function gets w rows. So this is like w, 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 w. So that is dw. Now, what is this w? rows.
You mean
It is for,
each row?
yes, Feder?
We mean each row for a bucket.
Each row for a per bucket. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So each row for each bucket. Exactly. This is what we are. And so what will I write? So for here, for the first location, I will create this vector, which I created. So suppose if I use the lth hash function, let's call it ULS. Like this is a vector which I'm going to create for lth hash function at the location S, right? So what will be this, right? So for here, it will be U11 vector U12, U1W. Now U21, U2W, and so on and so forth. Here you will have UDW, UD1, right? But now if you, so this is a big matrix which you have created. This is like a very, very huge matrix, right? But if you notice, you take this matrix M and you multiply with X. What is the dimension of this matrix? It is DW cross N times N cross 1. So what will you get? DW times 1, right? And this is the big, right? DW time. So this is basically, we have got, we are thinking of our matrix, which I was talking about before, as like one big row, right? Where first W location is for H1, next W location is for H2, last W location is for HD. So basically what has happened is that this two-dimensional array which I was talking about, now we think of them as a long vector like this. For the first row is for the first place, second row for H2, and so on and so forth, right? So this is so it was a very compact way of writing this product MX. Okay, so this was a very compact way of writing this product MX, right? Look, we cannot write this, but this is what I mean. But we have a very, succinct way of able to increment these things. So now imagine that you had one row 1, other row 2, the way we are, right? So what you wanted, so suppose you had MX1, right? And suppose this is MX2, and now you wanted to write row 1, row 2. What will you do? You just coordinate by just sum them up, right? So this is exactly why this is a linear map, right? Okay, any question? Okay, if not, then this is what is written here. So I hope I have explained to you in English. So this is our sketch matrix. Okay, so this is a very beautiful sketch matrix. Now we will take a 5-minute break and come back and do count sketch. So it's like 4:40 in my time. I don't know how much it is. Okay, so let's take a few minutes break.
Maybe we can come back just to clarify things, because so for the min count sketch,
yes.
So the probability that the x tilde is at least the x1 norm.
At most.
At most, yes. So yes. So the probability that xi tilde exceeds xi and plus additive mistake is at most delta. But when you combine two sketches in linear sketch,
yes.
So what happened with the error?
That's a very good question, Feder. Like, but if you're just talking about two sketches, we can just boost this probability, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than taking d equal to 2 log n, you take 3 log n.
Oh. Okay, yeah, that's yeah.
Right. So yeah, but you are right that this is what we were able to show. But if you just combine, like you could do this with Yeah, we could just do this with just taking some extra these things. Yeah, because you have to be good here, you have to be good here, and then you have to be good with some. Yes, you're right. Okay. So this is like what I told you was like people made it much like few years after Count Sketch, and this is a sketch which is like I think one of the most used sketches for big data, and there are lots of practical versions of this which have been made, and and it is completely inspired from AMS sampling. So before I go intuition, let me tell you who all the people are. So this was by I think 2004 or 2005 by Moses Chadikar, Chen, and Farag Colton, and I think this is this is very close to the best in terms of so once we will do halfway of the course, we'll come back and prove that many of these algorithms which we are going to talk they are optimal in certain sense. Okay, so let me tell you, so Count Sketch is very similar to Count Min. Okay, the reason why people do Count Min first before doing Count Sketch is because Count Min presents the basic idea of the sketch in slightly simpler way, because everything we are able to do with Markov, but now we need to compute variance and things. So it becomes slightly more technical than this, but the idea wise it is not. Okay. So we will use D hash function and each with W buckets. So you will still have D times W. That's the best way to think about these things. Okay. So this is D times W array. But now it is inspired by F2 estimates. So we will use some additional hash functions. So we will have H1, H2, HD as hash functions, but we will use additional hash functions, some G1, G2, GD over 1 minus 1. And so once you create some negative values, minimum doesn't remain the good estimate. Median becomes the best way to estimate things. Okay, so this is something to remember. So when we have lots of upper bound, minimum is a good way to deal things. But when you could have both upper bound and lower bound, things could just vary all along. Then the best thing is to take median. And like this is like a written in stone. You do it, and most times it will work. So let's go through the algorithm. Okay, so we have this D hash functions, which are again pairwise independent hash functions from 1 to n to 1 to w. Okay, but we also have G1 to Gd are pairwise independent hash functions from 1 to n to minus 1 to n. So like we first pick H1 to HS, HWD, and then we pick G1 to Gd. Look, even their ranges are different. This is minus 1 to 1. And here it is like buckets. This represent buckets, and this represent. So good way to remember buckets, and this is sign. And now, when a stream comes, we not update delta t, which would. So remember in count min, we're saying, oh, go to this bucket, and whatever number you're storing, please just go and add your this thing. But now, let's say this is signed sum. So this is signed sum. I see, well, look at my ith hash function or lth hash function and see what is this index going to map to. If it is negative number, then I'm going to take, like subtract this out. If this is a positive number, like this is positive sign, then I'm just going to add this. Okay, so a lot of things could happen. And what is my estimate? My estimate is for each x1 as before, I have d estimates, and I take the median of all the d estimates. Okay, but now notice counter values can become negative even if x is positive, right? So even if you started with x, or like even if at the end everything is positive, because of this signs, things could be negative. This is exactly what was happening in AMS sampling. So we could start from X, we could have end, which is all positive, but still the object which we are storing could be negative. Okay, so for example, what I mean by this. Okay, so let's see some location S. Okay, and this is say L, and this is say some 100 came, 5 came, and 36 came, and GL came -1, +1, maybe -1. So then what will be CLS? Well, CLS will be -1 times x of 100 plus x5 minus x36. Okay, like these are like index and something came like 100 and x something, right? So CLS will be storing, this is the quantity which it will be storing, right? So now some things could be positive, some things could be negative. Okay, so at least is the algorithm clear, right? So like unlike count min, now we are storing a signed sum at each of the index, not just a sum. Okay, so this is signed sum. So the best way to remember is that for each coordinate, right? So for each coordinate, okay, for each coordinate here, right? And like, so here I have several coordinates maybe mapping to this, but for each coordinate I have G function which tells me, well, if this coordinate comes, please add minus, minus of this. If this coordinate comes, please add plus, so on and so forth. Okay, so we have a signed sum. And so what is an intuition? So intuition is each hash function HL spreads the element across W buckets as before, and the hash function GL induces cancellation, and this is completely inspired by F2 estimation algorithm. Since the answer may be negative, even if x is greater than 0, we take the median. Is count sketch also a linear sketch? What will you do now? So let's go M. No, here. What would have done here? What will you do with this?
Instead of putting 1, you put 1 or -1 depending on the value of
GL. Exactly. Yes, that's it. So you look at this, you put coordinates like all, look at where HL maps S2. So these are the location they maps to. Okay, fine. So I know that these are the places where I will put non-negative, non-zero quantity. But whether to put 1 or -1 depends on whether my corresponding GL maps to that location 1 or -1. So your M will be now again made up of these things, but now with the signed sum, like this 1 or -1 signed vector. Okay, so now your M will be maybe like some 0, 1, -1, 1, -1, 0, right? So basically, here you have H1 and location S, okay, which all places H1 maps, which all index H1 maps to 1, and then I apply to those index G1 of those locations here. So if it is -1, then I put -1, 1, so on and so forth, and you can show that this works very well. Okay, nothing more than that. So this is why so it is very important that we have linear sketches, because linear sketches allow us to take negation, deletions, right? So when we will be talking about graph algorithm, we'll say, hey, delete this edge. Now, how do we handle? So then we will have a linear matrix. And it's a very surprising use of linear sketches in things like connectivity and bipartite testing and whatnot and what forth. Okay. Now, similar to the way we did count min sketch, we are going to do our analysis in 2 steps. First step, we are going to say that for each xi, it is not too much away from its expectation. And secondly, then we will apply variance to, okay, and no, this is what, and then we will apply union bound to talk about everything. But now let D be something, W is something, okay? Like count-min sketch, look, I always knew that xi tilde is greater than equal to xi, right? This I always knew. But now I cannot say it because of the negation. So we have to talk about expectation. And notice, what is expectation of xi tilde is xi. So this is basically, what word I have been using? This is, what is this kind of random variables are called?
The unbiased estimator?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. This is unbiased estimator. Okay, so we'll prove this first. Okay, and given that this is unbiased estimator, but now it can be overestimate or underestimate. So we talk about mod value. Okay, so xi tilde minus mod xi. So the mod in mod, and now we are not talking in terms of one norm, we're talking in two norm, right? Epsilon times two norms is less than equal to delta. So first, before we go, let's compare it to the count min. So now error guarantees with respect to second norm instead of one norm, okay? And now I'm not going to assume that we are working in strict turnstile model, nothing, okay? This is, we are working in turnstile model, okay? Like plus, like what is the end value of x or intermediate value of x, we don't care at all, okay? That's the first thing, okay? So in that sense, this is way more general algorithm than count min, okay? But error guarantees with respect to x2 instead of x1. And if your x is positive quantity, the second norm is always less than the one norm. Think of this way, right? What is one norm? So if you had a rational, if you had an integer coordinate, then one norm is nothing but going like this. It's like, this is what is also called Manhattan distance, right? And what is x2? It is this distance. This is Euclidean norm. So always Euclidean norm is less than equal to Manhattan distance. And in some cases, x2 is always less than equal to x1. But notice that space increases to 1 over epsilon square log n compared to 1 over epsilon log n counters, right? Because now I'm saying that the bucket sizes is like 3 over epsilon square. And look, whenever you have to apply Chebyshev, right? 1 over epsilon square is kind of, okay? So, how do you compare? So then how do you compare count min to? It's not fair to say that count sketch is better than count min or count min is better than count sketch, because look, what does count min gives you? Xi tilde is xi plus epsilon times mod x1, right? So, but this is what count min gives you, okay? But this guy gives you, in some sense, slightly better norm, because you have to compare with epsilon x2 2 norm, right? And then you have to see how these things vary. So actually, if you really want to do a right comparison, you should do epsilon times x2 and epsilon square x1 norm. This is the right way to compare, right? Like, because of the error guarantees which is provided by these two things, right? So, I mean, it's not obvious, clear in retrospect, like easily, which, so people try in different settings, different either count min or count, and sometimes they actually combine both of these data structures and do best of both worlds, okay? But, okay, so all I want to tell that it's not obvious to compare, like obvious to say, this is definitely better than that, okay? But count sketch definitely has its own set of advantages. Okay, so now let's get back to our analysis. So we fix an index I in 1 to n. And what is ZL is a random variable. And what is the random variable is going to take? If you recall, my random variable ZL is going to be GLI, okay, and CLHLI, okay. So what is CL of HI? So if you look at, remember correctly, here my has function HL, 1, 2, dot, 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 here is F, right? So what is happening is, let's say HL of I is equal to S, right? So this is the where ith guy has been mapped to W, okay? Okay, so what is CL of S? Right? If you recall correctly, what is CL of S is? Summation over, right? J HL of J equal to S, right? Right? Now GL of J times XJ. This is what CLS stores. Am I right? Now, so now you might say, hey, why are we multiplying GLI? So if you did not notice, look, what I'm taking xi tilde median of, I'm taking median of, I'm taking the counter value, and I'm multiplying with first counter value with its index, like G1I. I'm multiplying the last counter value, like where the ith guy has gone, again with GDI. So I'm not taking median of what I have stored, but I have taken a median of, I take another sign and then I take median. Okay, so this is what my algorithm is doing, right? One thing is what I'm storing, and secondly is when I take median, whatever is stored there, okay, I look at that counter value and I re-multiply. You will see its importance in a minute. Okay, I re-multiply because this is what will give us an unbiased estimator. Okay, with the sign of that quantity. So what is the sign of I with respect to G1? I multiply. What is the sign of I with respect to the dth hash function? I multiply. Okay, and this is why we have this GL. Okay, now let's so what is GLI CLS? Okay, let's just multiply this. So this, if I multiply this, can I write this as, look, I know, right? I know that I can write this as GL of I squared XI plus summation I prime not equal to I, HL I prime is equal to S, and GLI prime and XI prime. Is this correct? I just wrote it in this form, right? Because there will be one whole square and this. But what is GLI whole square?
It's one.
Correct?
It's one second.
Exactly. Because independent of what it is, this is one. So let's just remember this, okay? Okay. Now, just to make our life a little bit more easier, I'm going to introduce a different random variable, okay? It will make our life a little bit easier. So for I prime in 1 to n, let y prime be the indicator random variable, that is 1 if HLI is equal to HLI prime. That is I and I prime collide in HL, okay? So for each I prime in n, I have used I prime because I don't want to use I overload. Okay, so basically, I want to rewrite the whole sum in a slightly different way. I will come back to expectation in a minute, but let's try to write down this sum ZL in terms of Y. Okay, so this is what it is: CL HLI. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, I can write this as equal to GLI okay, I can write this equal to GLI, one second, summation I prime from 1 to n, okay, fine, this is okay, GL I prime, xi prime, yi prime, okay. Notice it is exactly the same sum. If you go back here, it is same sum, but now I have introduced a random variable yi, which is indicator random variable, okay, which basically takes one. So like I'm adding those, like, so what it, once you fix HL, yi's are fixed. That is 1 if HLI is equal to HLI prime, right? So notice that I can write ZL as this sum, right? So this is what is written here, right? I go from I prime equal to 1 to n, GLI prime, x prime. So this sum is like, it is only non-zero for those terms for which yi prime is 1. It means those index I prime for which HL and like those index I prime for which HL and I prime collides with each other, okay? So it is basically the same sum written with the help of y. This will make our life really very easy. Okay, now what is an expectation of ZL? Well, expectation of ZL is going to be equal to xi, right? Because as I told you before, there is a term here xi. So when GLI goes there, GLI and GLI prime is same. So it will become 1, as you all agreed before. And I know that yi is 1 because I is definitely there, right? So this becomes xi. But now I prime not equal to E GLI prime, y prime, xi prime. But notice one thing. Hey, yi prime does not depend on GL or GL. Like GL, y prime does not depend on GL at all. You get my point? Because yi prime solely depends on HL. So, and you have chosen them independently. So you can take expectation of y prime out. But what is an expectation of GLI into expectation of GLI prime? These are like pairwise independent random variables. So you could write this expectation of GLI times expectation of GLI prime. But what is expectation of GLI? It takes 1 and minus 1 with probability half. So this is 0. So this is why this whole term becomes 0. Okay. And what is an expectation of ZL? Is exactly equal to xi. So this is how we prove that it is an unbiased estimator. Okay. Any question? Look, we have just used this. Okay. But now before we move to the next page, what is an expectation of yi prime? Well, yi prime takes 1 or 0, right? Based on whether it collides or not. But it collides or not, because pairwise independence, it is just basically 1 over W. But now what is yi prime whole square? Because we will need this for variance computation. It is also 1 or 0 random variable, right? And for indicator random variable, probability that yi square is 1 is same as probability that yi prime is 1, which is 1 over W from pairwise independence. Okay? And you remember why it is 1 by W, right? From pairwise independence. Because, well, when I and I prime will collide? Well, they can collide at bucket number 1, they can collide at bucket number 2, and this, and this, and this. And for each, it is 1 over W square, because it is pairwise independent. And there are W places where they can collide. So W by W squared, so it is 1 over W. Okay? If it is not clear. Up until now, we did this. Now, we need to do variance calculation. Okay? So what is variance? Variance is nothing but expectation of ZL minus XI whole square. But what is ZL minus XI? If you look at ZL, was nothing but ZL was, I could have written ZL as XI plus this quantity. Now, we know that if I take ZL minus XI, only thing which is left will be I prime not equal to I, summation GLI prime, YI prime, XI prime, whole square. Okay? So now let's just take the sum. Okay? Okay? Let's just take the sum. Okay, so sorry, I think I have missed a 2 here. There should be 2 here. So now let's look at when they are same. So when they are same, so look, what is the I prime not equal to I prime? So you will have GL I prime, GL I prime, YI prime, XI prime, whole square. Right? Like this quantity times the whole square. Right? This is why, but this is 1, this is 1, so they will not care about yourself, right? If I sum them up. So this is why you get here XI prime whole square and YI prime whole square, I prime not equal to I for those terms, because this will become 1. And if you take the whole square, so YI prime whole square, XI prime whole square, and this. But forget, so if you take linearity of expectation, I could have taken inside this. But now what happens if I take an expectation of this quantity? As before, look, YI prime and YI double prime, they do not depend on how GL and GLI double prime works. But I know that expectation of this is 0. So all of these guys will cancel out each other. And what will be left with, this is exactly equal to summation I prime not equal to I, XI prime, expectation YI prime whole square. But well, we just saw that expectation of Y prime whole square is W. So what we get is mod X2 whole square divided by W. Because one thing which you have not counted here, so remember that what was 2 norm? 2 norm was summation, summation XI whole square half, right? So what you are be getting is, right? What are we getting? We are getting like a square root of that is X2 norm. But what are we getting is just this. So just this is nothing but whole square. And one thing which is missing is XI. But XI square is anyway positive. So this is second norm divided by W. Okay? Any question? Okay? And so now we have computed variance. So what should we do now? We just apply Chebyshev. Let's see what happens then. So now if we apply Chebyshev, probability that ZL minus XI in epsilon times mod X2 is variance divided by this, which is nothing but, remember, we chose W equal to 3 over epsilon square. So this is 1 over 3. So what we have been able to show? We have been able to show that ZL minus XI, like for each XI is this. But this is not what we return. What are we returning? We are returning median. And well, median of Z1, ZD minus XI. This is what we return, right? But we have seen this trick several times before, that whenever you return median, we can apply Chernoff bound. Oh, how many of them are far away from this? And you can get some e to the power minus CD. And so this is why we chose d to be equal to log 1 over delta, and then you can get delta up and about. Okay. So this is fairly simple. So let me just capture whatever we just talked about it. So now what we showed to you, that if you take more than 4 log 1 delta what do you call hash functions and 3 by epsilon square buckets, then for fixed I, expectation is same as xi, and probability that it varies too much from epsilon times second norm is delta. Now, as before, we want to say this for what is that called? We want to say this for all values of 1 to n. So you choose d equal to some theta ln n and w equal to 3 over epsilon square, and then you can boost the probability to 1 over n square. And again, using union bound, you can say for all I in 1 to n, we are not too far away from epsilon norm, like 2 epsilon norm with probability 1 minus 1 by n. So if I summarize everything, then what we prove to you is that that with probability 1 minus 1 by n, the guarantee of count sketch is that it is not like each xi term is not too far away, is at most epsilon far away from second norm, okay, with probability 1 minus 1 by n. And how much space we use is that we use 1 by epsilon square log n counted, and hence we use 1 by epsilon square log n and log n bits. Okay? Any question? Look, I just want to make one remark. Like, look, whatever you write here, log m bits, it also depends on what xi you are taking or what not xi taking, how much its representation takes. But yeah, so you have to be careful with respect to that. But the kind of model we have been working in, we just believe that log m bits is more than enough to do that. Okay. So, but that is all that I wanted to tell you today about. Okay. So I have not told you applications. So next lecture, our job will be to see several applications of like point query, range queries, sparse recovery, and some signal processing of these count min and count sketches. And then we will completely change track after that from streaming for some time, and we will move to dimension reduction like JL lemma and connect it to F2 sketching and whatever we have been doing a little bit, and we'll see how it goes from there onwards. So from next week onwards, next week, first lecture, we will talk about some applications of count min and count sketches, and then we will move to dimension reduction. Okay, any questions? So that's all that I was planning.
One issue. Second. Yes. So once you send a very nice cheat table of Chernov and Markov and so all the bounds.
Okay.
Can we also have a kind of summary? What are the main algorithmic questions in streaming, and what are the best known bounds, or what are the?
Okay.
Because so far we have quite a lot of problems, quite a lot of techniques, and at least I start to be confused.
Yes, Fedor. So yeah. So it's like you're right. Yeah. So we did 4 or 5 things basically. So one thing which we did is we counted all. What is that called? Counted the size of the stream. That's the one thing we counted first. So if you see today's archive, there's a paper. Okay. I think today's or yesterday's archive, there was a paper. Yes. Let me share. Yeah, I wanted to say, since you told, yeah, it's called optimal bounds for approximate counting. Okay. So Jelani, Nelson, and some Huiching Yu. So they settled.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday it was. You're right. So let's see chat. Okay. Okay. So yeah, you're right. So this is with respect to counting. Then we did some counting distinct elements. Then we did some frequency estimate. Then we did some AMS sketch. Then we did heavy hitters. Yes, I will do that. I also know, it's not that I know them very well, but I will make sure that I make a table with what we did and what is the best known currently, and whether lower, and what is the difference between lower and upper bound for all the problems we discussed so far.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Sure, I'll do that. Okay, any more questions or suggestions? Okay, if not, then
Thanks a lot,
thank myself.
Bye.
Bye-bye.